What's up, everyone? It's your boy Norn, Radd89 here, and today we're going to do a Radd movie review for Weapons. Yes, the latest, new, hottest horror film that's being talked about in the horror circuit, but also in the cinema world and just fans in general. It's getting a lot of buzz, and today you're going to hear my thoughts on this film, my unfiltered thoughts, and excuse my look or anything like that. I did work last night. It's my birthday, my daughter's birthday, and all that stuff. It's just a birthday bonanza over here, and I stayed up all the way through. So I'm recording this around, it's like 5:30 p.m. on this day, which is it's Sunday. I already forgot the day. It's Sunday. I've been up since the previous day at 8 p.m. and worked all night. Then we went to the movies and did birthday festivities, but you're going to get, like I said, my unfiltered thoughts on Weapons. So let's discuss this movie. Roll it. So Weapons is a new horror film. This is directed by Zach Cregger, and he is actually the one that did Barbarian. Just to keep in mind before we get into the review, Barbarian wasn't one that I was super hot on. I didn't hate that film, but it wasn't a horror film that I was super hot on. I like it because it was his first film, and you can see the foundation for a good director and a good creator. And now we get Weapons, his second film, and what I want to say preface right away is that I think this is kind of Barbarian was like the template, kind of the experiment, dipping his toes in the water, and Weapons is the better version of that storytelling that he does, because this is very similar. So I would say if you're a Barbarian fan, you're probably gonna like Weapons. So let's discuss my positives right away before we get into any mixed or negatives. And one key positive is I love the music to this film and the sound. Everything about that is just really key. I love the sound design and the music. That is a big part of horror films, and for me that was all on point with this film in terms of, like I said, making it feel creepy in that factor. But like I said, also the theme of the film, I found it very, very cool. The performances are pretty good across the board. I had no real problem with the performances or anything like that. And I think the world building and set building, for the town that we're kind of involved in this mystery, it's very intriguing. And like I said, this is more of a mystery, and I was sold on that. And in terms of being a fan of that, that's one huge thing that I love, is that this was an intriguing story, a mystery that kept me involved and had characters that I was interested in. One other thing I love is that we did have some gore moments. There are more I wanted. Definitely we'll talk about more of that when we get to mixed and negatives, but when we do get some gore moments, there's some really good ones, and they are very effective, and they go full on practical, just go for broke. So like I said, there are a few in here, and when they do go for it, it really does pay off. So this is a film, like I said, that has been getting a lot of praise. I had a lot of high expectations for this film. Didn't meet those expectations, not really. We're going to get a little bit into mixed and negatives now as we discuss and stuff like that. Main thing is that with this being Zach Cregger's best film right now, his best film, I think, this is one reason why I think this is kind of a mixed thing, is that you can see the same template in terms of storytelling, in terms of like a lot of the scares and the way he tries to design his stories. It's very similar to Barbarian, and like I said, I wasn't too hot on that film, but you can see how he fine-tuned his skills and actually improved them by this second film. So like I said, this is kind of a mixed, because you can see the improvement of him and a creator and a writer, but in terms of his style, you could definitely tell he has a certain style. Like if I showed somebody and didn't tell them this was the same director, and I showed them these two movies, I feel like they would be able to gather that fact just by watching them. Let's get into the main negative with me, and this is one key negative. The main thing is that zero scare factor with this film. It was creepy, don't get me wrong. There were moments where it was creepy. There were moments where the gore went for it, and I was like, oh, that's gruesome, and that's, oh yeah, I love that shot. But in terms of scare factor, and like maybe that's just me being someone who's kind of inoculated because I've watched so many horror movies over my entire life that I need something more, but I definitely needed more scares in this film. Like there are moments where we have tension and we're in a scene and we're enthralled with this tension, and then we get comedy. And that's one thing that I know that's kind of Zach's style, but like we get this injected comedy that I feel like is intentional. And for me, sometimes it takes me out of it. Where I love laughing, like I said, don't get me wrong, this was an exciting film. I was entertained, and like I said, but I was laughing more than I feel like I should have been because I wanted to be more scared. And there's moments where there's tense scenes going on, and I wanted to feel threatened. I wanted to feel scared. And I didn't feel that during this film. One other key thing is that this film goes with a chapter storytelling style. And like I said, that's very similar to Barbarian. And I feel like that kind of is another thing that takes me out of it, where Cregger doesn't have this balance yet, where this fine-tuned balance where he needs to create, where he keeps us tension-filled, but then likes to throw us for a curve and start the story at a different point, and we have to follow a different character and do this and learn this, where I love the fact when we get to the third act, I love that. That's a huge positive. I love the third act, and when we get to the point where we're meeting all these stories and they converge, but in terms of jumping from story to story, I don't feel like Cregger has actually nailed the template or the tone for that style yet, because like I said, there's some times where I did get taken out of this film because of the comedy and because we jump from story to story. This is still a film that I highly recommend you check out. Weapons is one, like I said, that had me entertained. I was laughing more than I should have been, but like I said, I wasn't bored with this film. And there's a good, intriguing mystery with some really great performances and the sound design. And like I said, the music on point for sure. And I like the cinematography and the color palette. It has a very kind of homey feel, like where you feel like this is a neighborhood. Like I feel like this is a neighborhood, but they do find ways to light it to make it feel almost, you know, like I said, creepy, almost like the Haddonfield kind of feel when you look at the Halloween films and stuff like that. But in terms of a Radd rating, Weapons in my book is going to get an 8 out of 10. Like I said, that's a very solid rating. This is still a film that I highly recommend. And if you people out there want more original horror stories and stuff like that, you should go out and support this film in the theaters, because that's how you're going to be able to do that. You vote with your money, and that's what the production people see and all the higher ups. That's what they see. When people vote with their money, they're like, oh, people want more horror stuff like this. Like I said, this is an improvement, and I'm very happy. So I'm hopefully when Cregger comes out with his third installment, whatever he tries to do with his third film, which I think he's in the works to doing the next Resident Evil film, which isn't going to be an original works, but I'm hoping that that film is going to be his champion, his magnum opus. So please like the video. That definitely helps out the channel. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and have that notification bell poked so you're notified anytime I drop a video. But please shout out down below, what did you think of Weapons? And like I said, most importantly, you all know what's up. Have a safe and happy day. Peace out.